And check that out, you don't even need to hit enemies, they get taken out all by themselves. Okay, so I wanted to try a fresh build with my Barbarian, and honestly, I've never tried anything like this before in Diablo. It's a Thorns build that basically makes enemies take out themselves. You don't even need to hit them, once they hit you, their health bars start rapidly depleting thanks to your Thorns, and then they just go away. Really, really fun, this build. So here's how to recreate this thorny build for yourself. Now, I want to give a big shout out to David Ford Games who put me onto this build. It's a really creative idea that I just could not wait to try out for myself. First thing, if you go into your character tab, you can see how many thorns you have by scrolling down on the left. Now, this is just the base level of thorns. It doesn't take into account the thorn buffs you can activate when you use some of your abilities. So for example, if you use Berserking, you can give yourself an additional thorn boost of several thousand, and that lasts for a few seconds. So we want to keep our eye on this thorn number, and what we're going to do in this video is make sure to increase this as much as possible. The more thorns you have, the more enemies get damaged when they hit you. So here's everything you need to put your skill points into. Number one, we want Flay, because Flay has a modifier called Enhanced Flay. Enhanced Flay gives you a 15% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. When enemies are vulnerable, they do of course take 20% more damage. So if you use one of your big attacks like Whirlwind or Hammer of the Ancients, you will do 20% more damage. This vulnerability also opens up enemies to the effects of Combat Flay. Combat Flay gives you 311 thorns for 3 seconds, and this stacks up to 4 times. This means we can have a potential of up to 1,244 thorns just from this one talent. When you use Flay, you get up to 12% damage reduction, which is really useful because this thorn build is all about tanking damage and dealing thorn damage to enemies. We basically want to increase our defense as much as possible along with our thorns. Those are the two things we're prioritizing here. Our main core skill is Hammer of the Ancients. You can use a different one here. It's not really integral to the build, but it's just, for me, it's a really solid, highly damaging move that you can pretty much rely on all of the time. Next, we have maxed out Iron Skin and Defensive Shout. These are really important because that's where a bunch of our defense is coming from. You can tank a load of damage with just these talents. And the same goes for Challenging Shout. Challenging Shout gives you a damage reduction of almost 50% for 7.43 seconds. So you're basically taking off half of all damage you would have got. With the modifier, you also get thorns equal to 30% of your maximum life. So that adds to our thorns total. Interestingly, the thorns scale with your maximum life, so the bigger your maximum life, the more thorns you'll get. And one of the talents that increases your maximum life is Imposing Presence. This gives you 15% maximum life on rank 3, its highest rank. Outburst is also really important and also goes hand in hand with max life. With Outburst, you gain 375 thorns on the max rank and gain 62 thorns for each 311 bonus max life you have. All that equates to more thorns. Tough as Nails is another thorn increasing talent. It boosts thorns by 9%. Not only that, but when enemies hit you, they take an additional 10% of thorn damage as bleeding damage over the next 5 seconds. So those thorns are really just, embedding themselves in there. Another thorn-based talent we want to slot in here is Strategic Challenging Shout. While Challenging Shout is active, you gain thorns equal to 30% of your maximum life. So to work out how many thorns that is, look at your maximum life in the character tab, then work out 30% of that. This 30% is how much thorn damage you do while using Challenging Shout. The final defensive talent we want is Martial Vigor. Martial Vigor gives you 9% damage against elites on its highest rank. And we do love taking out elites. Onto the other talents we want are just going to optimize this boost further. We have Warcry. Now, Warcry increases damage by 50% for 7.4 seconds, which is really good and also gives us Berserking at the same time. Berserking adds an additional 25% of damage, so that's almost a 35% damage increase in total. Aggressive resistance gives you an extra 9% damage reduction while berserking, so all this berserking is really increasing your damage and reducing the damage you're taking. Develop that further with Power Warcry, which gives you a 10% damage boost if more than 6 enemies are nearby, which in Diablo they inevitably are. Booming Voice is a natural follow-on from these, as Booming Voice increases your shout durations by 24%. So if they last for say 10 seconds, this gives you an extra 2.5 seconds on the top, and every second counts. And that goes for all shouts as well, so it just, makes shouts more effective. Guttural Yell is basically one that causes the enemy to deal 12% less damage for 5 seconds, so get that as well. Down to this part of the skill tree, we're going to go for Thick Skin, and with Thick Skin, each time you take direct damage, you gain 1.1% base life. So, we actually kind of want to get hit, because not only are we dealing thorn damage to enemies, but gaining life as well. Defensive Stance is another talent you want because it increases damage reduction gained while fortified by 6%. And Thorns actually give us a fortification. If you didn't know, fortification is a state you go into when you have more fortify than current life. So as your life goes down, fortification comes up and you take less damage. As for the ultimate, we want Call of the Ancients. No particular reason, but it just pairs really well with Thorns because it can just clear out loads of enemies in one go. And with our spare skill points, we're going to put them into Duelist because it gives you 9% attack speed when using one-handed weapons. And finally, for our key passive, we want Unbridled Rage. Unbridled Rage gives us core skill damage increases of 135%, which means Call of the Ancients does almost 1.5 times more damage, which is obviously going to come in really handy. It just, makes Call of the Ancients a lot more effective. So that's all the talents you need for this Thorn build, but we can increase Thorns even more with our items. Now, the first thing you really want when it comes to items is Emeralds. Emeralds in Diablo 4 give Thorns, so if you slot emeralds into your socketed equipment, you'll get plus 0.9% Thorns. If you wanted to increase those Thorns even more, upgrade your emerald to a flawless emerald. This gives you plus 0.105 Thorns. But this Thorn effect only applies to armor, so you need to slot your emeralds into armor for the Thorn effect to work. It doesn't work if you slot them into weapons or jewelry. Making a flawless emerald costs 3 regular emerald and 18,000 gold. If we were really pushing the boat out, we could craft the royal emerald, and this requires 3 flawless emerald and 50,000 gold. So it's a bit of an investment, but it does give you the highest thorn bonus possible. This one gives you plus 0.120 Thorns. But don't worry if you can't upgrade your emerald to royal. As I say, that is quite cost prohibitive. Once you've got 9 emeralds, as you've got a possible 9 sockets across your armor slots, so you'll need 9 emeralds, you will want the right armor. Now, I haven't found any armor with specific thorn bonuses, but that's okay because there's plenty of armor that helps with the damage reduction side of things. So prioritize armor with damage reduction. Anything that gives you more life or more healing is really good for this build, and more fortify is also good. What you can do if you've got the capability to do it is reroll your armor. When you reroll, you can unlock some really powerful abilities, and one of these has the potential to be Thorns. So if you get lucky and say reroll some boots, they may come back to you with extra thorn damage. There are imprints that give you things like 20% increase to thorns or make thorn effects last longer. So these are definitely worth having a look at. But it's not something I can really point you towards specifically in the way I can suggest what talents to get, because getting certain imprints and affixes on your items depends on the roll of the dice. If you didn't know how to roll your items, you basically just want to visit an occultist. There's one in Kaiovashad, and click the rightmost tab. This is where you can enhance an item, and if you don't like how it turns out, you can enchant it again. Although bear in mind you will need veiled crystals and a lot of gold. Rerolling legendary gear costs fiend roses as well, and these are pretty rare items, so I would suggest taking that into consideration before you reroll. Anyway, here's some gameplay of the Thorns build in action. It's just a crazy fun build, and if nothing else, it allows you to take out those annoying little monsters like spiders and things that chase you without having to turn around and hit them yourself. They hit you and just get evaporated. It's, yeah, just really good to watch. But it works well with whatever enemy you're taking on, so massive mobs and even elites. Check out this gameplay of the Barbarian Thorn build to see what happens.